Hey, welcome back to Atheist Edge. I'm Jim.
And I'm Sam.
We're just going to riff a little bit. Like I said in a previous segment, I wrote a couple books. Every one of them was very research intensive, required a lot of digging deep into theology and philosophy. I'm just going to touch on the first book. I'm not even going to advertise it. We'll get to it maybe someday. But this book was created in an attempt to avoid having to explain myself to believers, to theists all the time. This is 25 chapters. Each chapter is a question that I've been asked ad nauseum by believers, and I just got tired of answering. So I decided to make a book out of it. It's simple as that. It took 7 months to actually get on paper, and I'm going to hit Sam with all of them.
We'll see how many we get through.
Today we're just going to do one, and Sam agreed on number 4, and he barely even knows what I'm going to ask him. So we're just going to riff on this.
We're going.
Here we go. You cannot prove that God does not exist.
Define God. Checkmate. Checkmate,
okay,
bitch.
This is where I have to play devil's advocate, right?
Okay, here we go. Devil's advocate.
Okay, let me put my believer hat on. Let's see. The God of the Old and New Testament, Yahweh, the war god of the Canaanites, the one that 80% of the population of the United States of America believes in.
Yahweh?
Yeah. You cannot prove that Yahweh does not exist.
Again, define Yahweh. Yahweh, W-H-W, whatever, what is that?
W-A-H-W-E-H.
Whatever it is. Okay, so you got this Yahweh thing, like, it's just a word. I could put Uni, I could put Flying Spaghetti Monster, I could put Shit Turd, anything.
Okay.
Put anything there.
You've read the Bible, right?
Yes, so what is the definition?
Well, you've read the Bible.
Yeah, cover to cover.
Old and New Testament.
Cover to cover.
You're familiar with Yahweh as a hypothetical spiritual being.
I'm also
a divine agent that created all of humanity.
Here's an example. One of the questions about God has to do with his power and what he can and cannot do.
Oh, yeah, okay.
In Exodus, there's a segment where you can see the same story essentially repeated twice. They're like jammed up next to each other. And in the first one, Moses.
Creation story or the flood story?
This has to do with
because there's both.
This is
two
in
of
Exodus.
each.
No, this is in Exodus.
Uh-huh.
So Moses and Pharaoh.
Okay, the actual Exodus story. Yep.
Exactly. So in one of the stories there, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart so that
he limited his free will.
And then
I thought he wasn't supposed
another
to do
one.
that.
It said Pharaoh hardened his own heart. So you have a clash right there between free will and predestination, and the extent of God's power and how it affects reality and how that influences people's choices.
Our first biblical contradiction.
Exactly.
I think
I'm not sure
I have a strange feeling we're going to get to a lot of those. But yeah.
Well, maybe the first biblical contradiction is just the first phrase.
There's only 915 more to go.
In the beginning. Was there a beginning? Mere assertion. Go fuck yourself.
Beginning of what? Anyway, back to, you cannot prove there is not a Yahweh, that Yahweh does not exist.
Easy. If you can't define it, it doesn't exist.
I defined him as the one spoken of in the Old and New Testament.
If there's a contradiction in the definition, it doesn't exist. God cannot have all power and people cannot have free will at the same time. Now, if you wanted to, you could argue and say that God is in fact control of everything and knows everything and planned everything out. And if you want to do that, that's fine, but then you have a very serious problem with the whole Jesus dying for our sins. Sins are bad things that we choose to do. How can we choose to do bad things or not if God laid everything out, designed our entire lives, genetic code, and all of our choices? Another great example of this contradiction is Judas. Christians claim that it was predicted in the Old Testament that Judas would betray Jesus.
Failed prophecies.
In which
We'll get to that.
maybe it's failed or not. It says it was fulfilled in the New Testament.
Yeah,
but
we'll talk about that.
Just assuming that all that's true, then what you've got is Judas, who had no option, no choice in whether or not he was going to betray Jesus.
For the purposes of argument, for the purposes of this discussion, let's assume hypothetically that everyone on earth agrees on what was done and said in the Bible. The hermeneutics, is that a word? Hermeneutics? The interpretation of the Bible is homogeneous for everyone. It's all the same. Let's agree for the purposes of this argument that we all agree on what the Bible says and there are void of contradictions and that God is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient. Now, answer the question.
You said no contradictions, and then you listed off
I knew
traits
you were
that are contradictory.
Yes.
You can't have omniscience.
Explain that.
omniscience.
I know where you're going with it, but I didn't even think of that.
There's a couple of ways to look at
it. Can't be all three, right?
Right, you can't be all three at the same time.
Can you think why?
And I don't even know you can be even one. One of the problems with any definition of God is that typically people rely on an unlimited nature, an infinite nature. They're saying that God is unlimited, all-knowing. And so it's like, that's why he has all power. He has power without limit. He has knowledge without limit. But the problem is, how can you know that? You have no evidence for it.
Presuppositional apologetics.
Yes, you can't know whether or not a particular being or something has all power unless you yourself had all power or knowledge of all things that were possible.
Or you could have faith that it's true.
Yeah, I mean, you could have faith, but you don't have any evidence or reason to suppose so.
You want to know what some of my answers?
Yeah.
Page 47. Sorry.
All right, so Jim here is opening his book to page 47.
Thanks, Sam.
And
Thank you. Here we go.
Be reading some quotes. Here we
You
go.
cannot prove God doesn't exist, right? You're right. And I can't prove that Santa Claus, leprechauns, and the invisible pink unicorn doesn't exist either. What's your point? That's one.
That's a great one.
That doesn't instantly make God appear in reality just because I can't prove it. And first off, or second off, proof only exists in mathematics. You can provide proofs in mathematics or law, but even in legal, in the courtroom, you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. What they're really saying is you can give overwhelming evidence for someone's guilt or non-guilt.
Just a little side note. That's why personally I don't think that proof is only in mathematics. I think, yeah, there's an element of there's proof in that, but it's about
What are you
evidence.
certain of?
It's about reality.
You are?
Yeah.
Because that's just a presupposition for me.
For you it is, but I mean, you might say
I can't prove reality is real.
You're doing it right now. You're talking to me. Just the very fact that you're communicating with me and using words proves that you believe in reality and that it's objective. That I'm a real person here. That I'm a real brain responding
Prove
to.
it. Not prove it. Citation,
Here's
please.
the proof right here.
What?
There's no need for citation. The proof is
We're
right
getting some
here.
off cue. Some off. He's
The-
saying
the
move it
proof-
along.
The
He's
proof
saying
is
move
right
it
here.
along.
The proof
Okay.
is right here. All right. Well, cool. You got some more quotes. Okay.
Yeah, we're not
okay. Couple quotes.
The burden of proof is the one who makes the assumption.
Correct.
So right off the bat, this is what I'll stop here after this one. I thought you were going to hit fish hook on this one right off the bat. Proves God doesn't exist. That's proving. That's providing evidence for the negative. You can't do that. The burden of proof is on the one who makes the claim.
Exactly.
So if someone ever came to you and says, "Prove leprechauns don't exist," it's illogical. If you have a claim that leprechauns exist, guess what? Burden of proof. It's you, baby. That's what I thought you were going to hit on right off.
Well, that's why even before that, you have to define your terms. If you don't have a consistent definition of God that holds together, you can't even say whether or not he exists, or even provide any evidence, he, she, it, whatever.
Good talk.
So that's why I brought that up even before that. But yes, if you're the one making the claim, you're the one who's got to provide the evidence. But before that, you have to define what it is you're talking about.
Hey, this was a great talk. We got 24 more to go. If you like what we're doing, it's just going to keep getting better. Our social media links are below. Our Patreon site is below. And that will do it for us at Atheist Edge. I'm Jim.
And I'm Sam.
Cheers.